What drives me is seeing people worship, like creating an atmosphere of worship, people with their hands raised, connecting with God, feeling his presence, really believing the words that we're singing. That's what drives me, because we're doing our job as musicians and as singers. We're glorifying God and we're leading the congregation in this worship to God. That's our job, and we don't have to always sound perfect. We make mistakes, but what drives me is knowing that the songs that we've sung, the heart that we've sung them with, has glorified God, and we've praised him and we've worshipped him, and his presence has come down.
Welcome to the Hacka Podcast. My name is Greg Hackathorn. I hope you all are doing well. That new intro music was from Isaac Valiente, a young man that records and produces his own music in Adelaide. He has original music out on Spotify and iTunes if you want to check him out, but I'm grateful that he has agreed to produce some stuff for the podcast. I'm excited to share today's conversation with you because it is with my favorite person in the entire world, my wonderful wife. You also might want to stay tuned at the end for some very special bonus content. You're going to love it. Steph Hackathorn is the music director of the Pentecostals of Sydney and has organized the music for the annual General Conference of the UPCA for a number of years. Not only is she a gifted singer and musician, but she is also an anointed preacher of the gospel. She is the best mom to our 2 daughters that I could hope for. And on top of all of that, she is a working professional in a demanding field and runs half marathons just for fun. There is nothing this woman cannot do. We focus more on her story in this conversation rather than sharing our story, which we may do in a later podcast episode. So without further delay, let's get to the conversation. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining me tonight.
Yeah, it's about time you had me on. Thanks for asking me to be on.
Yeah, well, of course I was going to have you on. You're a massive draw card compared to myself. I'm sure everyone wants to hear from the one and only Steph Hackathorn.
Yeah, okay.
What's it like being the spouse of a podcaster? Super annoying?
No, it's good. I think it's something that you enjoy doing, so I'm very supportive of that.
So far?
So far?
Yeah.
Yeah. We've already had the discussions about how often you record, so it's all good. Yeah.
I'm locked down. I got nothing else to do.
I know. It's okay.
Well, I wanted to start off. I like starting off these conversations by getting to know the person I'm speaking with. Obviously, I know you very well, but our listeners may not. And so I'd like you to give us a bit of a background, what it was like growing up. You're half Assyrian, half Maltese.
Yep.
So what was it like growing up in a household where you had half Iraqi and half Maltese?
Yeah, so both my parents, well, my mum was born overseas and my dad was born in Australia. So even though they were, Maltese and Assyrian, they were still quite Aussie. I don't know, I guess what you would call it, but they were kind of first generation Australians, and so they, I think, tried to adapt as much, quite a bit at least. So, we're the Maltese side of us makes us talk with our hands a lot more. We're very expressive. Family is a really big deal. Very big family as well. My dad's family is quite a big family. My grandparents, we visited my grandparents on both sides quite a bit growing up, and we still do to this day.
Food's a big deal.
Food's a huge deal, yeah. But surprisingly, my mum didn't really cook a lot of Assyrian food. I think she knows a few dishes. But
Do you think it's because your dad didn't like Assyrian food?
Maybe. I do actually think it's part of that assimilating into the Australian culture that they really adapted to that. So when we ate Assyrian food, it would be my grandmother's cooking. And when we had Maltese food, it would be my dad's mum's cooking.
Your dad didn't cook?
No, never. I wouldn't even trust him in the kitchen, to be honest. So yeah, it was I tried to learn as much as I could before my dad's mother passed away. So I have a few Maltese recipes, and then the Assyrian food I'm not super fond of, but I probably could make some if I needed to. So
are you saying that Lebanese food is better than Assyrian food?
No. No.
Are you allowed to say that?
No. I'm not saying that. Scratch that. Scratch it from the podcast. No, it's Maltese food is more Mediterranean. I think you enjoy more so the Maltese food. I find when I cook, you tend to like, macaroni and some of those other dishes, whereas Assyrian food is very similar to Lebanese food, which we do enjoy, but we can buy that quite easily.
So you had you and your two sisters?
Yep. So I'm the eldest of 3. Yeah. I've got two younger sisters. Yeah.
And your dad's a builder?
Yes, Dad's a builder, and all of his brothers are either plumbers or landscapers or that kind of those kind of industries. And then my mum has had one brother who passed away quite a few years ago now. So.
And he was a lawyer.
He was a lawyer and a really amazing guitarist. So he had a huge range of Fender guitars, and so when he passed away, my mum got one and then I got one. We donated one to church as well. So yeah, he was a really, really good guitarist.
Did your nan, so your grandmother, on your mom's side, did she push them both to play music?
Yeah, I assume so.
Your mom played the organ, right?
Exactly, an organ and piano player. Yeah, and then her brother played the guitar. So I think she definitely did push them that way. Yeah.
So that's sort of like your musical background, you would think.
Yeah, that side for sure. My dad. Oh, but my dad played the saxophone.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So he used to play for church for a number of years. But yeah, he plays the sax.
So obviously you're a musician.
Yeah.
When did you get your start playing the piano?
So according to my mum, I was 8.
Well, she would know.
When I started, exactly. I was 8 when I started playing, and I went through the Australian Music Examination Board. So I studied classical piano. So that was reading sheet music and doing all the exams to go through that. I actually, just a few weeks ago, drove past my old piano teacher's house because I was in the area. It's near Revesby, Padstow area. Her name was Mrs. Morgan. She was, from what I remember, she was my only piano teacher for that very long period of time that I was learning classical. Yeah, so we would go to her house and have our lessons and have our exams there. At that time, the Music Examination Board would send their, I don't know what you call them, like the graders for you to pass that level. Yeah, that would send them to the teacher's house, and we would do the test there.
So you were trained classically?
Yes.
So gospel, is that all picked up from church?
Church, fully from church.
And most of it by ear?
Yeah, and watching YouTube videos sometimes, learning from my time at Bible school as well.
So when did you start playing at church?
I started, from what I can remember, I think I was around 12. I started playing for youth.
Yeah.
And then I was given an opportunity to play for Sunday services.
Wow, at 12.
I think Sunday service was around the 14, 15. Okay. I don't have a great memory, but I'm pretty sure it was around there.
So you've been playing for a number of years.
Yes.
At the church.
Yes.
Now, we talked a little bit about your background. We said your dad is, he is alive. So far,
yes,
he's been locked down.
Old Jeffrey, yes.
So your dad's a builder,
yes,
and your mom's the minister. That's not normal.
Very different. Yes, exactly.
Very different.
Exactly.
Mostly, it's the man, and then the woman's doing something
correct,
else. So
correct,
it was vice versa.
Yeah.
And also, you grew up being a PK. So what was that like? What was it like growing up being a preacher's kid? Yeah,
it was great. I think as growing up in that kind of household, you're exposed to a lot of, well, at least, okay, I'll rewind a bit. So at the time, our Bishop Slack, was very heavy on bringing in guest speakers from around the world for our conferences or for special weekends. And because of that, I was exposed a lot to those preachers, and that, they would have kind of leadership dinners and that kind of thing. And because
I forgot to mention that, because I was a PK as well, but not the same kind of PK.
Right.
You get the PK who their dad's a preacher. My dad was a preacher.
Yeah.
And he was a local licensed minister, and he knew people within the Missouri district and so on. But we're talking about people coming over to your house like Brother Stone King, Brother Eli
yeah.
Hernandez, the Gonzaleses,
Yeah.
Incredible men and women of God. So
Yeah.
what was that like?
It was it was amazing, and it still is. Like, we're blessed at the moment that we still have friendships with these people, are still able to interact with these people. When you're a lot younger, you feel like they're untouchables and they're part of this,
They're still
like,
pretty untouchable.
I know, but they're real people.
Yeah.
So no, it was incredible. It was, I think, from a very young age, I was aware of a really strong presence of God and a really strong anointing on certain people, certain ministers and that kind of thing. So it was amazing. I definitely remember looking forward, knowing, for example, Brother Stoneking's coming over for dinner tonight with the leadership team, and knowing that it was going to be a powerful move of God, even in our dining room, know. So I definitely looked forward to it. And
you formed long-lasting relationships, with the Hoffmans and others, the Trimbulls, the Kleinens. Yeah, pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So that leads me to my next question. Many people would have heard this story of Brother Stone King when he was in Sydney, and he was at the Sydney airport, and he collapsed, and his heart stopped, and he was basically dead for 20-something minutes. And then Bishop Slack was praying for him, and God touched him, and he was able to fully recover. But part of his recovery was, once he left the hospital, he needed to stay in Australia for how many weeks? Do you remember?
No.
But he had to stay for a number of weeks
yeah.
before he could fly back to the U.S. And where did he stay?
Now, spare room. I know it's crazy to say, but...
what was that like, having Brother Stone King
it was interesting.
have breakfast with you?
Yeah, it was very interesting. I was quite young at the time too, though, so it was this man of God.
Young and naive.
Yeah, exactly, young and naive. This man of God in our spare room. I actually remember he was kind of... because he did recover, and he was okay, but then he couldn't fly for a certain time. And I think that was the time where he was kind of getting bored with being in the house, and so he went with Mum to this, I think it was Spotlight or some store, and he did this whole flower arrangement with artificial flowers. We had it for, I'm sure we had it for like 15 years.
Amazing.
That he had created, because he's very, at the time he was very creative in that sense too.
And he had to have ants in his pants. I mean, the man traveled every weekend.
And he was stuck in a house for weeks.
Well, he still does basically every weekend.
Yeah.
That's a pretty cool story.
Yeah.
So you had all these influences hovering around your life. You had these interactions, and you saw, the hand of God on your mom, in your family, and so on Brother Slack and other leaders within the church. When did you feel the call to ministry? Was it around the same time that you went to Bible school, or are those disconnected?
So I was having a bit of a think about this, because I've listened to some of the other interviews and some of the other, and your own testimony as well. I know you probably, maybe one day I'll get to interview you, but you really had a time that you can point to in your life where God called you. You felt God really called you.
Yeah.
You were going one way, and you can point to that moment and say, that's where my life changed completely. And I was trying to think back through my own life, and I don't feel like I have a great memory, but I can't really point to one specific time. I would just say it was, I think the feeling of wanting to be used by God was continually reaffirmed in my life by friends or by preachers or prophecies, or it was never enough for me, looking down the rest of my life, to think it's enough to just sit on a chair at church and just attend church. Like, it was always, I know that God's called me for something more than that, and I know He's called me to do something greater than that, whatever that may be. Yes, I don't know if that.
So it was
answers.
sort of like a gradual thing. It was something that was always kind of there.
Yeah, I always felt the call to preach, like from a very, very young age. And at the time we would, get the opportunity to exhort at youth or at church. I had a few opportunities traveling on our AYM program. It's our Australian Youth Missions program, where you go with a team of young people to a different church, and you're able to speak and sing. And so I would always get the opportunity to speak there. And I also had yeah, I had some close friends, older friends, more so my mum's friends, who kind of mothered me in a way and really affirmed that God had a call on my life. But it was reaffirmed. It wasn't me kind of searching in the dark, not really knowing and, oh, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. No, it was, this is what God's called you to.
And that's so important to have those individuals, those mentors or the people around you that when you do feel that call, if you're a young person, you feel that call, that there's someone there to affirm that for you.
Yeah.
And as you said, you're not just hoping or wishing or thinking, but you know that God has called you.
Yeah.
So you felt the call to ministry. You always want to be involved. Ultimately, you ended up going to Bible school. How did that happen over in the U.S.?
Yeah. So I did not like high school at all. I feel like I don't take tests very well. I didn't have the greatest friends in high school either. My best friend at the time was a year ahead of me, Liz. So we were kind of always separated. So I wasn't really close to anyone. So after high school, I applied for uni, got into uni, and then asked my mum and dad whether I could defer for a year and go to Bible school for a year to study music.
When did the dream begin to go to Bible school?
Very young. I used to, man, I could probably sing you any of IBC's songs from way back when. I used to buy the CDs. I think we used to order them from overseas. I don't know if it was called Pentecostal Publishing House at the time. It was called
Word of Flame.
Word of Flame, yeah. And we used to order the CDs, like the discs, the things my child doesn't even know, what they are.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I have I probably still have them actually, all the CDs from all the Bible schools, music. I loved music. I loved the whole idea of Bible school and yeah.
So who has the best music?
No. I'm not going there. Everyone has a different opinion. It's all right. No, the music coming out today is incredible. It really is. It really is incredible. So
very, very good answer. So what made you end up going to Gateway?
Yeah.
'Cause you mentioned Indiana Bible College
I did.
a couple times. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but there are rivals.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Gateway, which is now Urshan, the defunct school.
I know. So I did originally want to go to IBC. I had more of their music at the time, the CDs, for some reason. But my mum said I could go to Bible school if I went to Gateway at the time, because the Trimbles, brother and sister Trimble, are really good family friends of ours. So if I was going to move overseas, if I was going to move across to the other side of the world, it had to be where there were people that could support me from a family side. So
Are you sure it's not because you stumbled on my Everyone's Connected profile?
Yeah.
Or MySpace?
I'm sure. I'm very, very sure. No. So that's how I ended up in St. Louis, which was great. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So what was it like being involved in music at Bible school?
Yeah, amazing.
Because that's another level,
Yeah.
Preaching is like, you're going to class and you're learning and you're growing and that. But music, that's like...
Yeah,
that's
it was incredible. Yeah, it was incredible. It was everything I dreamed of, to be honest. Listening to the CDs and just imagining what it would be like, it was all of that and more. So I was at Gateway when brother and sister Hoffy were the music directors, who were incredible as well. I learned so much under them.
And I think James Sims was still there?
He was. Yeah, James was playing the piano and writing songs when I was there. Yeah, we got to travel around and sing at different churches and exhort, and yeah, it was incredible. It was absolutely incredible. And that gave me a lifelong connection with the Hoffys as well. We got them out here to Sydney a few years ago as part of our Turning Point conference.
Pre-COVID, yeah.
Yeah, pre-COVID. And that was incredible. There were things that I remember him teaching me back how many years ago? 12 years ago?
Sure
11 years
say that?
ago.
Admit that?
That's true. But anyway, yeah, they were incredible then, and
yeah, both of them. They're both wonderful people.
It was.
Yeah. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk to some young people who might be listening. They may be just getting involved in ministry, or they feel the call to ministry, and pertaining to you would be like music, worship leading, preaching, that sort of thing. Do you have any advice for a young person that's feeling the call, just sort of feeling that direction to be involved in music, to be involved in worship leading, feeling that calling to be a preacher? What's some advice that you would give that person?
So first I would probably say don't be discouraged if it's not happening at the moment. You know, sometimes we want things to happen now because we think we call to that particular ministry, and if it's not happening, it's like, God, why? You know, I want it to happen now. But I think number one is don't get discouraged. Then I would say find something to do. So offer yourself to the leader of that department, or depending on what you're wanting to get involved in, but offer yourself. So we, as leaders of departments, we can't read people's minds. So if I
sure God doesn't just tell us.
Yeah, he just drops names. Sometimes he does, sometimes he
sure.
does. He does drop names into a leader's mind, but more often than not, it's because the person has come to you and said, hey, I want to teach a Bible study. And then we get you connected to teach a Bible study, and then that grows to, you know, whatever it is. Or, hey, I want to lead a connect group. I want to create a connect group. And then that grows, and you develop your skills, and you develop within your calling in that environment, if that makes sense. The other thing I would say is to make sure that you are living holy and you're living right before the Lord as well. I don't think God gives us, you know, we feel called to something, but if our day-to-day life doesn't match up to what that specific calling requires, then the two they can't marry up, right? So you can, if I want a, you know, really prestigious job in the secular world, my lifestyle and how I present myself and the things I say and how I present myself on social media, you know, all of this contributes to whether or not I get this job at this prestigious company. And I think that also translates into even more so with how we're living before the Lord and how we're living. Yeah, and then I guess one thing I did want to bring as well, just from the music side of it, is if you are starting out or you do want to get involved, is show yourself faithful and show yourself reliable. You know, for coming from a music side, if you're going to join the music team, or you want to join the music team, or you've joined recently the youth music team, whatever it is, learn your stuff at home. Don't, you know, come to practice prepared. Be reliable for your music director, that they can, hey, this person knows their part. This person's ready to go. They've prayed. They're ready. There's being reliable and being dependable is a big
and I think it's important that we don't treat anything as like, oh, it's just a Wednesday, or it's just youth, or it's just, you know, we need to do. Or I know from my perspective, I sing on the music team mainly because my wife is the music director. But from my perspective, when it comes to preaching, if I'm given an opportunity to do something, I'm not approaching it with, oh, it's just midweek, or oh, it's just youth. I want to give it my all because of the calling that God has in my life, and we should carry that in every area where we feel to be involved in ministry.
You know, we have ladies camp conferences, ladies camp renamed to conferences, and I will practice for those, and we've got a very, I guess, skeleton type band and singers.
No boys allowed.
Sometimes they came one year. But I will practice for those like I'm practicing for a Sunday service. Maybe not to the extent of, you know, a turning point type practice, our conference turning point. But yeah, I still practice, you know, for a Wednesday as like I do for a Sunday.
Yeah, and I think you have to have balance, obviously. Like, you can't practice every Sunday like it's turning point every day. So.
Well, yeah, you know, I do work a secular job as well. And I personally can't put that time. Some people can.
It'd be like telling a preacher to prepare every sermon like he's preaching at general conference.
Yeah.
It's like, that's
I know.
probably not going to happen.
I know, yeah. It's kind of the same. But yeah, I'd say put the practice in and be dependable.
So how long have you been the music director at the Pentecostal? You've been there for a while now?
Yeah, I think about 11 years, I want to say. Some 10 years maybe. 10 or 11 years, I think that sounds about right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what's it like leading worship at the church you grew up in?
Pretty surreal. My mum used to play the piano too, which is, I think, it would be interesting to see what she thinks about it as well, because what I'm doing she used to do.
Yeah.
It's pretty incredible. And a lot of the people there now I knew or have come over the last few years, but there are still some that were around when my mum was playing the piano. And so I think it's a great honor. It's a huge honor to be able to serve in the church I was born in.
So you've been doing it for over 10 years now. How do you stay fresh? How do you stay inspired?
Yeah.
And you're not just playing How Great Is Our God.
Well, we pull it out every so often.
Normally on a midweek.
I know. So staying fresh, oh man. I have a great committee who come with great ideas. They do. And so I think surrounding yourself with people who have good ideas that are not like just your ideas is really good.
Especially your spouse. That's good.
Yep, sometimes. Whatever. I can't even... Oh, man. Okay, here's a little tidbit for the audience out there.
This will be edited out later?
No, I ask him sometimes, what song do you feel goes with this theme? I've got these songs and I just need one more. You have never given me a song suggestion. Or if he does give me a song suggestion, it's like... I don't know, something from 50 years ago that's not even in our repertoire anymore.
Or one you haven't played yet. Yeah.
Exactly. So, yeah, I would say surrounding myself with a great team is good. There's always new songs coming out. There's always new technology. There's always new gadgets and gizmos. So I think those contribute to staying fresh. Surrounding myself with people who are more skilled than I am. I am definitely not the smartest in the room, as it were, when it comes to certain instruments or specifically sometimes what to play, where to play it, or, from that point of view. So, yeah, we've got an amazing team with very, very skilled people.
How do you determine what sort of songs to play? Like if you're introducing a new song, how do you guys figure out which ones you're going to do? And this is for all those that have been putting in suggestions.
So normally if I hear a song, I kind of just feel that it would really speak to our church, or if it's really speaking to me, I then think about it in terms of church. Can we replicate what I'm hearing and what I'm feeling in a big church setting? I think sometimes that's the problem as well. We get some song suggestions, and sometimes I love songs as well, and I'll bounce them off of people around me. So bounce the songs around you with people around you to see whether they feel like it would go well with your church, if it gels well with your congregation. But sometimes I will love a song, but they will say that there's too many words, for example. We want our songs to be easy for our congregation to sing. We don't want them to be glued to the screen because they're reading 20 lines of a verse, So, yeah, I think it's just balancing the songs that are suggested, the songs that we feel to do with what the church will accept and what we feel will create a spirit of worship for everyone. Everyone. We want young people and older people to be on the same page. Yeah,
I think you guys do a good job of finding that balance. It's not like just so youth driven that the older saints are just like suffering through worship, but it's good to have that balance.
Yeah, we try. Obviously we'll miss the mark every once in a while, but hopefully more often than not, we're bringing everyone on the same page in worship. Yeah.
When it comes to ministry, what drives you? I like to ask this question to leaders.
Yeah.
What drives you when it comes to ministry? What is your passion?
Well, I think if I can break it up maybe a little bit.
Sure, you do what you want.
Thanks. For the music side of it, what drives me is seeing people worship, like creating an atmosphere of worship on a Sunday, on a Wednesday, whenever that may be. People with their hands raised, connecting with God, feeling his presence, really believing the words that we're singing. That's what drives me, because we're doing our job as musicians and as singers. We're glorifying God and we're leading the congregation in this worship to God. That's our job, and we don't have to always sound perfect. We make mistakes, but what drives me is knowing that the songs that we've sung, the heart that we've sung them with, has glorified God, and we've praised him and we've worshipped him, and his presence has come down and filled the house. And I'm very gold, if anyone knows the colors. So I'm very task driven and in that sense. So
this is from Real Colors.
Real colors, yeah. So I would say I have a job to do. I run the music department at the moment for POS. And so our job is to have a good worship set, whenever we have a service, whenever we're asked to, whenever that is. That's the job. And so we're going to do everything within our power to make that seamless for people watching online, for people actually at church, and to make it sound good. And so that I think that comes into it as well, as being driven to fulfill the goal of this is what we want for our
you set
Sunday.
that vision, you set that goal, and you want to make sure that you're hitting the mark every time.
Exactly. And making changes where we need to.
Not only are you heavily involved in ministry, but you're a young mother of 2 beautiful girls.
Yeah.
Might I say. That's a true statement. And you're a career woman, so you've got a very demanding job. How do you find the balance of doing all that, to being you're fully involved in ministry, ministering every week?
Yeah.
You've got 2 kids under the age of 5, and you have a career, a job that's quite demanding. How do you balance all of these things?
So, I'm very gold, very task oriented. So the practical side of it is I schedule and plan and have lists, and I am aware of what is happening when it's happening. I think that's very important to help with that balance of there's so much going on. There's that saying, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail, and that is completely true.
Are you sure?
It's true. So the practical side is, yes, very, very organized in that sense. How I find balance is, and honestly, I was thinking about it, I can definitely point to an amazing support network. Like that. The support network means I find balance and means I'm able to do everything I'm doing to the level that I'm doing it. So obviously my mum's involvement with the girls, my grandmother's involvement with the girls, and then our bumbo and our tutu as well, with the girls on Sundays and any Thursday practice. Or because of these people, I'm able to give 100% to other areas when it's needed. So I honestly, there's nothing magical about it. It's just very organized, and we have an amazing group of people who.
So you're not super mom? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not. I'm really not. Like even you, and the amount that you do as well. Without all of these people helping me and helping us, there is no way we could do what we do. And so it's because of them. Honestly, I wish I could give more advice to the mum or the dad or parents out there looking to, find more balance.
Do you have any advice for young moms? Not necessarily in finding balance per se.
Yeah.
But when it comes to having young children, being involved in ministry, so it doesn't necessarily have to be about balance, but any sort of advice that you would give a young mom out there?
Like a young mum in church? Is that what we're?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if anyone outside of church will listen to this podcast.
That's true.
Our target audience is church people.
Yeah, true. A young mum in church, what advice would I give her? Don't be afraid to, number one, ask for help. If you need a few hours or you need to go and do something, ask for help. It's totally fine to ask a friend to watch your kids, and then you can return the favor at a later date. Like it takes a village. It's okay. I'm more than happy to watch my friends' kids for a few hours if it means they can go and do something.
Right.
So I think don't be afraid to ask for help. The other thing I would say is before your children came along, you were involved in the things of God. And I know this is probably a little bit controversial, and but before kids, you may have been heavily involved, or you may have been, doing whatever it was for the work for the kingdom of God.
Right.
And then kids come along and they are all consuming and they are a lot of work. But just because now you have the title of mother doesn't mean that your calling has changed. It doesn't mean that God isn't wanting to use you to that a particular level in your calling or in what you felt to do prior to children. And I think sometimes as moms, speaking specifically to moms, we can get lost in motherhood a bit because it is all consuming. But I think finding that balance of, I love my kids, I love spending time with them. Yes, God has called me to be their mother and to raise them right. But at the same time, I'm, also called to, for using myself as an example, I'm also called to lead a music department at the moment. And when given the opportunity to preach and to, study for that sermon and to spend time practicing in preparation for that music practice. And I don't love my kids any less. I'm not any less their mother because of that. But I think, just reminding that young mum that,
I think that's very important, and
Yeah.
I'm not sure I should be the person telling a mom what to do, but like God, I know this is extremely simple, and people have accused me of being someone who communicates very simply, but just to put it simply, when God called you into whatever ministry you're doing prior to having kids, He knew you were going to have kids.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So it's not like He's taking that calling away now that you have kids.
Yeah.
He called you knowing full well that you would one day have children. So I think it's important to still be involved. And, you can hit the pause button per se for a few months or even a year. I know our pastor advises people to take about a year off with their first child, but that doesn't mean that you're no longer to be involved in ministry.
Yeah, exactly.
So for those of our listeners who know us or don't know us, we were married quite young. I haven't spent much time on our relationship in this podcast on purpose because I wanted it to be about you, and I think that you're incredible and you have a lot to offer. So I wanted the listeners to get to know you a bit and not so much me. But we were married young. We were married at the age of 20. And we've had a lot of great moments over the last 13 years together. And this is obviously dating and engaged prior to marriage. And because we married young, we've been able to experience a lot of firsts together, but also some really difficult times. When we lost our first pregnancy, it was pretty devastating. I know we'd been married for about 7 years, and people had begun to wonder if we could have kids.
Yeah.
We can have kids. We were interested in doing other things at the time. But then, we finally made that decision, and we fell pregnant, and we had that pregnancy, and we lost it. How were you able to work through that time of loss?
So, when that happened, we were actually going on an AYM trip, if you remember back.
Yeah, to Perth.
Yeah. So, we had just found out I was pregnant. I think we were still pretty early on in weeks, but we had just found out, and we got on the plane, and we actually told Kanina and Lani, if you remember. So we are the worst at keeping secrets.
The absolute worst.
We are, because we just love sharing in the joy with everyone, even if it's a gift or whatever it is. We just want to share the excitement.
Wait, let's stop there.
Yes.
We're good at keeping secrets. The
Yes.
important secrets.
Correct.
So if you have any secrets to tell us, we will not divulge
Sorry,
it.
yes. I'm talking about the exciting things of our
Exactly,
life,
yes.
of life in general, yeah.
Gifts and whatever.
Correct, yeah. So, we were actually going on an AYM trip, and we got on the plane with Kanina and Lani, and we told them. I think they were the first ones we told that we were pregnant.
You pulled out like your 4 positives.
I did the sticks, yeah. And then we went on the AYM trip, and I took a few more tests, I think on the Saturday morning, and the second line on the test was fainter than the Friday. Then we came back from the AYM trip and went to the doctor and found out that there was like some levels that indicated pregnancy, but we had lost that viable pregnancy or whatever. I don't know really what they call it.
They call it
at that
chemical.
stage.
I don't like calling it that. But.
Yeah, so that was really devastating. And for being our first child, our first pregnancy as well, it was a shock. And I know it's common, we've had friends experience miscarriages that were way more devastating, way more devastating than that. And we also have friends that have walked through years of infertility as well, so by no means am I, equating this to that. But yeah, it was devastating. It was a shock, but we kind of just walked through it, right? That's what we had to do at the time, and we trusted that God had allowed it to happen for a reason. And why it happened, we didn't know, but we knew that God was going to, bring us through it. And when it was possible, we would try again to have to have a baby. And I think we grieved. We definitely grieved, but then we moved on, and then we trusted God.
Pregnancies are always stressful for me.
Yeah.
Always. Just as a man, you're completely out of control. I know obviously you guys aren't in much control.
Yeah, exactly.
Biology has taken over, and so for me, just all the way through pregnancies, it's a bit of a roller coaster.
Yeah.
Every time you complain about something, I know.
Googling.
Oh, that's the worst. And it doesn't end after pregnancy. You keep doing it once you have kids.
It's true.
I mean, every second week, I think my child has some debilitating disease.
Yeah.
Do you have, you kind of already gave it. I was going to ask if you had any advice for someone going through a situation like that, but you kind of touched on it.
I, it's fine to grieve. Like, I think no matter how far you are in pregnancy, if we're specifically talking about miscarriage, it's okay to grieve. It was still as soon as you see those 2 lines on that test, you are thinking 9 months down the road, you're already thinking about this child, you're already thinking about what you're going to do. You've got hopes and dreams.
Yeah, I mean, we went into a baby bunting.
Exactly. It's a loss of what was going to be. It's a loss. Someone actually, I was listening to a podcast a few weeks ago, and they said, I think it was all pain hurts, no matter what pain it is, it hurts. So it's okay to grieve, but then also trust that God will bring you through, and trust God that he will, restore, and believing for another pregnancy and a baby, if that's what you're wanting to do. Yeah, so I think grieve, but then determine that you will trust that God's will and God's plan, he holds our lives in his hands. So trust that he will bring you through it.
Amen. Well, in conclusion, I wanted to give you the opportunity. I do this at the end of all of these conversations that I've been hosting. I want to give you the opportunity to share a word with the listeners. Obviously, I've been sort of directing the conversation and asking you certain things, but if God's laid something specifically on your heart, I'd like you to take your liberty and to share whatever the Lord has given you for the listeners.
So obviously I listened to the podcast and I was aware that this question was coming, but earlier this week in one of the daily readings, it was 1 Chronicles, I think 17, David was speaking to Nathan, and he was saying, I live in this beautiful palace. I have all of these things. I want to build a dwelling place for the Ark of the Covenant because it doesn't have a nice building, etc. And Nathan firstly says yes, but then God comes to him and says, no, actually, David's not the one who's going to build me this temple, this dwelling place. So Nathan goes back to David and says, the Lord has said that he never asked you for a dwelling place. He's done all of these things for you. He's caused you to defeat armies. He's caused you to have these great victories in battle. So I don't need you to build me a dwelling place, but your son is going to build the dwelling place, Solomon. And the verses that follow, David gets everything prepared. So he gets the wood ready. He tells the people, this is what's going to happen. He put his own money towards it, the Bible says. He had everything ready for Solomon to continue the plans and to continue what he wanted to do, pretty much. I kind of felt like the Lord was speaking to me in that moment, that the generation that's gone before us has set the stage, as it were. They've gotten everything ready. There are giants, if I can say that, in our organization, in our world at the moment, that have powerful walks with the Lord, that work in the miraculous, that prophesy, that do all these things. And that stage is set, and we know the lifestyle, and we know the callings and what's required of that calling.
Right.
And so I really believe that God was speaking through that and saying to our challenging myself and challenging this generation, that the generation before us has gone and they have set the stage. Are we going to continue in what they've planned and continue in what they feel called to do and to further the gospel? That's what we're trying to do with everything that we do, is to see souls saved. And I was thinking about it. There will be a time where if there's something wrong with our kids, and this, I go to my mum and I ask her to pray. She probably goes to her friends and says, can you pray as well? If something is wrong, I immediately go to her because I know that she has a strong walk with the Lord. Right. And there's going to be a time when she's not around for me to go to. And will my girls come to me, to get me to pray for their children or their circumstance or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. So I really felt the Lord challenging me that these things have been set in place. Am I going to carry them forward into the next few years and however long, the Lord tarries? Are we going to further that? We're going to take what we know and push the gospel forward.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Steph and that it ministered to you. Make sure to stay tuned for bonus content at the end of this episode from a very special guest. If this episode blessed you today, please share it with a friend and encourage them to follow the podcast. We are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and a number of other platforms. Just search the Hacka Podcast and you should find us. We are releasing content every week, and the best way to keep in touch is to subscribe or follow the podcast so it goes directly into your feed. If you have time to rate and review the show where you listen to it, I would greatly appreciate that. And now, what you've all been waiting for, Ava joins the show. Welcome to the podcast, Ava May.
Thank you, Daddy.
Thanks for taking time to join me. You're so busy during all of this lockdown craziness. So how old are you, Ava?
4.
4? Do you have a birthday coming up?
Yes, I'm 5.
You're going to be 5? How long? How long to your birthday?
August after this month.
Oh, okay. So only a few more weeks. You're going to be 5 years old.
Yeah, and I get to go to big school.
Oh, at the end of this year, you're going to big school?
Yeah, and I made a new friend for big school, but I don't remember her name.
Okay, well, hopefully you remember it by the time you get there. So you go to preschool now? What do you do there?
I see Boo Boo.
Oh, do you have any other teachers there besides Boom Boo, who is actually supposed to be called Miss Bowie at school?
Boo Boo.
Yeah, I heard you've convinced all the other kids to call her Boom Boo instead of Miss Bowie. Is that true?
Boo Boo.
What's your favorite thing to do at school?
Cutting.
Oh, with scissors.
With magazines.
Cutting pictures out of magazines?
Yeah, but I want to buy a magazine for home.
Right. Interesting.
You want to buy a magazine so you can cut it up?
So tell us, do you have a sister?
Yes, Reagan.
How old's Reagan?
2, and she's bonkers.
Is bonkers a new word that you've learnt recently? Yes. What do you call Reagan when you don't call her bonkers? What do you normally call her?
Freaking.
No, when she's a little bit crazy, you call her what?
The king of the jungle.
No.
The wild child.
Wild child.
Oh, this interview is going off the rails real quick. All right. Did you want to say anything to the listeners? The people who listen to this? Do you want to say anything to them?
Hello, bye-bye.
All right. Well, there you have it. Amen. In all of her glory.